This is the ultimate cold case. Did you know we were all related? We all came from a mysterious missing ancestor. The hunt is on for Ancestor X. Today we'll dive into some incredible prehistoric ancient human discoveries and groundbreaking clues that will help us learn more of who was here before us.
The face of a ghost.
It sat in a Chinese well for nearly a century, silent and forgotten. No one knew what it was, or more importantly, who it was.
Now, thanks to a bit of fossil gunk and some game-changing genetics, the experts finally know. The mysterious skull from the Chinese well belonged to a Denisovan. And with that, one of the strangest mysteries in human evolution got flipped on its bony head.
Before diving headfirst into the mystery of the skull, let me tell you more about the Denisovans.
Who were the Denisovans?
In 2010, scientists analyzed a tiny fragment of finger bone found within a cave in Siberia. The DNA from the finger bone didn't match Homo sapiens. It didn't match Neanderthals either. It belonged to someone else, a lost branch of humanity that no one had ever seen before.
It was a new species, and one of the greatest discoveries of the past century. Scientists quickly named this new species Denisovans, after the cave where the bone was found.
And then that was pretty much it. What are you gonna do with one measly finger bone? Scientists couldn't do anything. For years, all they had were scattered clues. A molar here, a jawbone there. Then scientists started finding traces of Denisovan DNA lingering in the genomes of modern populations in Asia, Australia, and the Pacific. That was the big breakthrough. Scientists realized that Denisovan DNA was hidden in certain populations and absent in others. This was a real, genetically distinct species of human who appeared to have been the ancestors of Asians and Pacific Islanders. But how did they differ from Neanderthals? What did they look like? And what happened to them? Don't worry, I'll get there.
The Harbin skull.
The skull's journey is a story in itself. It was found in the 1930s by a construction worker in Harbin, northeastern China. He was worried the government would come and take it and maybe destroy it, so he hid it in a well where it remained for over 80 years.
In 2018, his family finally retrieved the skull and handed it over to scientists.
Then, after several years of analysis, a bombshell dropped. Traces of ancient DNA on a tooth revealed it to be a Denisovan skull. Scientists freaked out. They went from nothing but a finger bone and some DNA to an entire cranium. For the field of archaeology, it was like going to bed with $5 in your pocket and waking up a millionaire. And what a cranium it is! The Denisovan had a huge brain case rivaling modern humans in volume. It had a broad, flat face, more human-like than Neanderthal faces. But like Neanderthals, it had a thick brow ridge and no high forehead like modern human foreheads.
This thing had enough anatomical weirdness to make scientists argue over what species it should be called. And they are still arguing. Some propose the skull belonged to Homo longi, aka the Dragon Man. Others say it's just a branch of Denisovans. Nobody can agree on anything except that Neanderthals are no longer our only close cousins. Neanderthals, you're no longer the favorite. For over a century, Neanderthals have hogged the spotlight. Scientists have called them our sister species. They've been blamed for our cold weather adaptations and often relegated to awkward roles in museum dioramas. You know, the hunched caveman with a club. Neanderthals were the rugged, heavy-browed yin to our sleek sapiens yang. But now, they might have to step aside. Genetic comparisons suggest that Denisovans are even closer to modern humans than Neanderthals are. If that's confirmed, it reshapes the family tree, with Denisovans possibly becoming our new evolutionary siblings, which would downgrade Neanderthals to the weird cousins. Which brings us to the biggest question of all. Who is Ancestor X? Ancestor X. Anthropologists have hunted tirelessly for the mysterious Ancestor X, the population that gave rise to both modern humans and our archaic cousins. Ancestor X is the progenitor of Homo sapiens and Neanderthals, and most likely Denisovans too.
The issue is that Ancestor X died out a long time ago. Was it something like Homo heidelbergensis? Was it a ghost lineage that scientists haven't found yet? Could it even be something older?
The Harbin skull doesn't give us a name, but it throws fuel on the fire by showing just how much overlap existed between early human species. Denisovans, Neanderthals, and Homo sapiens appear to have been in some ill-fated love triangle that gave birth to the human race. But Ancestor X predates that torrid love affair. They are far more ancient, which is why I'm going to shift gears right now and check on some human ancestors that predate the Denisovans by more than 1 million years, so strap in.
When humans rose from the earth.
Two different human ancestors both living at the same time? According to a tiny tooth, it happened.
In the dry, cracked earth of Ethiopia's Afar region, a tooth gleamed in the dirt. The tiny, tiny tooth was a fragment of a person who died over 2 million years ago. Shortly after it was discovered, another tooth was found, and then another. By the time scientists pieced all of these teeth together, they realized something shocking. The teeth were not from the same ancient human species. 2 different teeth, 2 different human ancestors, both living in Ethiopia 2.6 million years ago.
And it gets crazier. One of these ancient humans was from the genus Homo, the lineage that would one day invent deep space probes and toaster ovens. The other ancient human is a mysterious member of Australopithecus, and possibly an entirely unknown species. Could this be Ancestor X?
The fossils that changed the timeline.
The teeth were not from the same ancient human species. 2 different human ancestors, one from the genus Homo and one a mysterious member of Australopithecus, were living in Ethiopia 2.6 million years ago.
This discovery is a big deal because for years, scientists believed the Homo genus appeared after Australopithecus went extinct. These teeth prove the timeline is wrong. The human story is not a simple single-file line. Instead, it's a tangled family tree with multiple branches coexisting at the same time. This finding suggests the mysterious Ancestor X, the last common ancestor of Homo and Australopithecus, must be even older than we thought. The textbooks are wrong.
For years, school textbooks painted human evolution as a single-file line. Apes, then Australopithecus, then early humans like Neanderthals, and finally us.
According to study co-author Kay Reed, that version is incomplete. Human evolution isn't a single path. It's more like a chaotic, tangled bush. It's a total mess of branches going nowhere and vines tangling together.
But somehow it worked. Scientists now think the success of Homo sapiens came from the failures of all the other hominins who aren't here with us today. But it still doesn't identify Ancestor X. Where the heck are they?
When teeth talk.
Unlike most anthropological discoveries that come with cave paintings and at least one stone tool, all scientists found in Africa were teeth. Nothing but teeth. Luckily, teeth can tell us a lot.
For example, the teeth showed that this particular version of Australopithecus, the big unknown species that no one's ever seen before, had unique canines unlike other Australopithecus species. This proves that it's a complete unknown, and it developed totally unique characteristics. On the other hand, the Homo teeth matched almost perfectly with the teeth of other early human ancestors, meaning that not much has changed dentally in 3 million years.
This seems to prove that Homo species were completely unique from Australopithecus. So again, there must be an Ancestor X somewhere connecting these two, but where?
Lead author Brian Vilmoyer said, "We know what the mandible of the earliest Homo looks like, but that's it. Everything else is still blurry," meaning they don't know anything about the earliest Homo species bodies, only their teeth and jaws.
We need more fossils if we're going to find Ancestor X.
What were they doing?
The other big question still unanswered is what the 2 different species were doing in this part of Africa at the same time. Did they compete for food, ignore each other, fight, interbreed?
No one has the foggiest notion. This is as far back in the human family tree as scientists can go, so you bet it's a bit murky. What the experts do know is that Ethiopia's Afar region 3 million years ago looked nothing like the dusty desert it is today. There were wetlands, grasslands, seasonal rivers, and confused giraffes eating grass instead of trees as the landscape was slowly starting to change.
Were these hominids eating the same plants, using the same tools, chasing the same prey? Were they friends or enemies? These are the questions that no number of teeth can answer.
Not yet, anyway.
Scientists are hoping that one day technology will advance enough that isotopes in the teeth and microscopic scratches can reveal the diets and habits of these ancient humans.
But it will, sadly, take a little more time. And speaking of time, these two different human ancestors lived during a key moment in human history:
the evolutionary blip. The period between 3 million and 2 million years ago is notoriously underrepresented in the fossil record. Too little erosion and not enough dirt getting deposited resulted in fewer fossils being preserved.
And that means fewer clues about how humans evolved. This was one of the most critical stages in our development, but it happened in a place where bones refuse to fossilize.
And that's why scientists are having such a hard time. And it's why any new discovery is so exciting, including this one. These new teeth fill in a key evolutionary blank spot with hard, datable evidence. And it turns out finding Ancestor X is way harder than archaeologists were hoping. Now they have to puzzle out this weird coexistence between Australopithecus and Homo species. They met at a crossroads. Some species went extinct. Others became us, and a few may have crossbred along the way.
And so, the search for Ancestor X continues. The discovery of two coexisting hominin species proves that our family tree is more complicated and more ancient than we once believed. It's a reminder that we aren't descended from a single, isolated ancestor. Instead, we are the result of a tangled, coexisting ecosystem of possibilities, a story of competition, cooperation, and survival that is still being written, one fossil at a time. And now for tools that are even older than humans. But first, I want to give a shout out to David S. and Bruins Fan for supporting this channel. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos like this, and let me know your favorite ancient human species.
Tools that predate humans.
It's a pretty simple question. How can there be tools that predate all known humans? It doesn't make any sense. It's like finding a nest full of chicken eggs in the middle of the Sahara Desert with no chickens around.
In the windswept desert badlands of northwestern Kenya, which happens to be pretty dang close to the Sahara, a man named Sammy Lokorodi took a left turn where most would have gone right.
Not because he was quirky, but because he was lost. Sammy was off course, riding through a dry riverbed when fate, or perhaps the ghost of an ancient toolmaker, nudged him toward a spot that no one had bothered to explore.
What he and his team of scientists found there didn't just rewrite a chapter in the human origin story, it set the entire book on fire. They uncovered a stash of handmade stone tools, the basics like blades, flakes, and pounding stones. While to the untrained eye, these rocks may look like scattered junk, they are in fact deliberately shaped artifacts. And they were made 3.3 million years ago. That is 500,000 years before the earliest known humans were even a thing, and 3 million years before Homo sapiens.
But if there were no humans alive yet, who made these tools?
Homo not even born yet.
Until now, the oldest known tools dated to about 2.6 million years ago, and were thought to be the brainchild of Homo habilis, our supposedly clever early ancestor, but not Ancestor X.
The assumption for decades was that once humans figured out how to smash rocks into razors, evolution took off like a shopping cart strapped with a bunch of bottle rockets going down a hill. But these new artifacts, dubbed the Lomequian tools after the site Lomequi 3, predate Homo habilis by 700,000 years. That's not just a new record. That's the archaeological equivalent of finding a smartphone in a pyramid.
So, who were the mysterious beings with enough brain power and opposable thumb skills to invent tools before humans existed?
Scientists don't know, but they do have some suspects. It could be Australopithecus afarensis, who I talked about a little earlier. They walked upright and had decent brains, but up until now, no one thought they were wielding weaponized rocks. The most likely culprit is Kenyanthropus platyops. A skull from this species, also 3.3 million years old, was found only a half-mile away from the tools. The issue is that K. platyops is an enigma wrapped in a shrug. Scientists don't even know where K. platyops fits into our family tree.
The third option is my favorite, and that third option is that it could be a completely unknown species, as yet undiscovered, who made these tools. And now they're just waiting to give paleoanthropologists an academic aneurysm. cognitive leap, or lucky smash?
For years, archaeologists like Sonia Harmon at Stony Brook University held to the Homo-only theory of tool-making. And Sonia isn't the only one. A lot of experts have said that only members of the Homo species have ever made tools. But when they got their hands on the Lamequian tools, they changed their tune. When Sonia Harmon and others like her were shown 149 blades excavated in 2012, they knew they were wrong. Someone outside the Homo family tree was making tools nearly 3.5 million years ago. What were the tools even for? The most likely answer is food processing. The thing about this part of Africa is that 3-odd million years ago, it was a forest. It was more like the Pacific Northwest than the grassland savanna of today. This was where Ancestor X likely evolved, along with dozens of other human species. The forest was their ancestral home. And then the forest started shrinking. The trees got smaller, grew farther apart, and food vanished. During this process, humans had to adapt. The earliest hominins would have struggled as the trees disappeared, so they pivoted. As the trees diminished and food got harder to find, they started using rocks to make food easier to find. This is basically the story of humanity. We went from hanging in trees to being desperate for food and picking up a rock, which we then used to bash something yummy. And from that first bashing, a new chapter in the human story began. These ancient tools could have been used for anything from butchering gazelle to cutting open nuts or tubers, cracking logs to get at the tasty insect protein, or something weirdly specific that no one's even imagined yet. Researchers are now scanning the tools for any forensic leftovers. The builders may have left microscopic traces of plant gunk, marrow residue, or bug guts on the blades. If scientists can pick up traces of something on the edges of the stone tools, they could figure out what they were used for. And that would be a huge advantage in our search for Ancestor X. The accidental revolution. The hilarious part is that the find almost didn't happen. The team literally got lost trying to find the site thanks to Sammy's wrong turn. And it was when they got lost that they found these amazing tools. Tools built at a time when no one on Earth had the skills to build them. It's a real catch-22, and I wish scientists would hurry up with the answers. Sonia Harmon and her team are still digging. They believe even older tools may be out there, hiding beneath the dust, waiting to expose just how long ago that first spark of genius actually flickered. And that's the real question here. When did the first flicker of genius light up a mind? Which species was the first to see a rock, not just as a rock, but as a tool? A mystery that won't quit. What does it mean to be human? In the rugged highlands of the Republic of Georgia, just 60 miles south of the capital Tbilisi, someone very old just got caught leaving a fossilized calling card. A piece of jawbone, complete with a couple of stubborn molars clinging to it, peeked out from the orange-brown dirt like it had something to say. And it did. This unassuming relic turned out to be a 1.8 million-year-old jawbone that could belong to one of the earliest known Homo erectus to set foot outside Africa. Before passports, potato farming, or even spoken language, a prehistoric pioneer decided to take an epic hike across continents. A journey so profound, it is now known as the first human diaspora. And apparently, they dropped his jaw along the way. The first exit from Africa. Announced by the Georgian National Agency for Cultural Heritage Preservation in July, this find came from the archaeological site of Orozmani, just 12 miles from the much more famous hominin site of Dmanisi. If that name rings a bell, it's because Dmanisi already broke paleoanthropology in the 1990s. It was here that scientists unearthed a treasure trove of early human remains like skulls, bones, and tools. The remains belong to a very strange group of people. So unlike what scientists expected, they gave them their own name, Homo georgicus. But like all great indie bands that get absorbed by a major label, they were eventually rebranded by the mainstream as Homo erectus. Homo erectus was the best. It was our upright walking ancestor, once thought of as the first hominin to stand fully erect. These days, though, scientists know that's not true. While Homo erectus is believed to be the first human species to develop a human-like body plan, Australopithecus was standing upright a million years earlier. But there is something that Homo erectus did that broke the mold. It packed up and moved. Homo erectus popped out of Africa around 2 million years ago and wandered into Asia, Europe, and eventually Southeast Asia. This is believed to probably be the very first diaspora in human history, meaning that one group of people spread themselves out of the original homeland to parts unknown. Now, with this new jawbone from Orozmani, scientists may be looking at another early Homo erectus site. But there's a catch. According to archaeologist Georgi Bidzinashvili, who's been heading the dig at Orozmani since 2020, the jawbone isn't alone. His team also found a single Homo erectus tooth nearby, as well as stone tools and animal bones, all evidence that whoever lived here was chopping, chewing, and hunting. The million-year-old question is whether this Orozmani hominin is older than its Dmanisi counterpart. Sadly, the science team doesn't know yet. Both finds sit under lava flows that date to around 1.8 to 1.7 million years ago, making it impossible to get a more precise date. For now, scientists can only squint and speculate. The implications, however, are juicy. If the Orozmani fossil turns out to be just as old or older than the Dmanisi relic, it means that multiple hominin groups may have dispersed into Eurasia at the same time. And this would be a revolutionary breakthrough in human evolution. Scientists can't decide whether there was one massive migratory push that saw Homo erectus leave Africa and start spreading humanity across the globe, or if it happened in small, random groups of people who just wanted to move to a new neighborhood. If the jawbones prove to be from two different epochs, it means migration happened slowly in waves of people fleeing Africa to explore the world. How cool would that be? Exploring the world at a time when humans had never even left Africa yet. Imagine being the first person to see a bear, or a saber-toothed tiger, or a woolly mammoth. None of your friends back in Africa would believe you. Homo erectus was small? One of the things the Dmanisi jawbone has taught scientists is how embarrassingly wrong they've been about early human travelers. Scientists have been telling us for years that Homo erectus was tall, strapping, and smart enough to pack trail mix. But these fossils disprove that entire narrative. The fossils reveal a race of beings who were short, small-brained, and probably clinging to survival with every last ounce of their strength, which makes it all the more surprising that they made it this far north. They weren't nearly as battle-hardy as everyone thought, so kudos to them for embarking on such an epic quest. Why Georgia? If these ancient hominins were leaving Africa and heading into Georgia, why? What was so attractive about this rugged patch of Eurasia that it drew one of the earliest human migrations? Archaeologists suspect the answer might lie in a combination of geography, climate, and good timing. Think fertile river valleys, game animals, and a nice patch of land to avoid overcrowding back home in Africa. Homo erectus may have started breeding a little too enthusiastically, which led to overpopulation. This may have convinced some Homo erectus to leave. And Georgia, with its beautiful scenery and abundant natural resources, was the perfect place to set up shop. Was Homo erectus Ancestor X? No, it wasn't. But it was the first known human species to pack its bags, say goodbye to its friends, and strike out in search of greener pastures. And isn't that just the most human thing? There's nothing more human than abandoning your life, moving to a new city, and starting fresh. So even if Homo erectus isn't the infamous missing link, it is the species responsible for changing the world. Once Homo erectus left Africa, the world belonged to the humans. But while they may be our first known pioneers, they may not have been the very first. Scientists are now looking at another, even older candidate who might be our original ancestor. Ardipithecus. Ancestor X? For over a decade, the name Ardipithecus ramidus floated through the halls of museums and universities like a rumor that no one was willing to believe. Then, all of a sudden, the whispers stopped. 15 years after the first rumor of her existence, Ardi, as she's affectionately known, has finally shown up to the party. She lived 4.4 million years ago in what is now the forests of Ethiopia, long before the likes of Australopithecus or Homo erectus, or even stone tools were on the scene. And the moment she stepped into the scientific spotlight, she started rewriting the opening chapter of human evolution. The fossil skeleton known as Lucy was found on November 24, 1974 in the Hadar region of Ethiopia by paleoanthropologist Donald Johanson and his student Tom Gray. She was an Australopithecus afarensis who took the scientific community by storm. The discovery was enormous. The fossil was about 40% complete, making it the most comprehensive skeleton of an early human relative found at that time. It provided crucial evidence that early hominins walked upright millions of years before they developed larger brains. Fun fact, the name Lucy came from the Beatles song Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, which the team played at the celebration after the discovery. It reshaped our understanding of early hominins. But Lucy wasn't the end. As scientists would figure out over the next 20 or 30 years, she was only the middle. After Lucy came Ardipithecus. The first report was that a jaw had been found, but without anything more, scientists hit a dead end. They also found scraps of a skull belonging to a hominin from about 7 million years ago, known as Sahelanthropus cadensis. But with only a few pieces of the skull, scientists could learn absolutely nothing about it. So there scientists were, a whole skeleton of Australopithecus and a bunch of fragments of even older creatures. Lucy clearly wasn't the oldest, but without more bones, scientists couldn't learn anything more about Lucy's older friends. The man at the forefront of this mystery was Tim White of Berkeley. Tim had direct access to Ardi's jawbone and promised that he was going to make some incredible discoveries. But he said it might take a while, and it sure did. For 15 long years, Tim's team delicately separated 110 brittle bone fragments from volcanic rock, digitally rebuilt crushed skulls with CT scans, and argued in quiet rooms about how feet should bend. The science world moved on, and we can't thank Tim enough for his dedication. Almost 2 decades of work has brought us here. Tim has revealed the full skeleton of what just might be Ancestor X. Now known as Ardi, she comes complete with her jawbone, hand bones, pelvis, foot bones, and skull. The most surprising revelations, however, came from what he discovered about, you guessed it, her teeth. In primates, males often have dagger-like canines. These are great for competing over females and sometimes each other. They're basically savage fighting tools for when apes have bite fights. But human males are much different. The teeth of human males are like toothpicks rather than daggers, which is an important distinction because it says something about how our ancestors behaved. Tim White and his team compared male canines that they found belonging to the same ancient species as Ardi with Ardi's female canines. And what they found was no dramatic difference. No biological switchblades, just boring teeth. And you know what that means? It means that Ardi's species was on a human-like path. She wasn't behaving like a modern ape, since apes have those terrifying teeth for violence and competition. The simple fact that both males and females had non-threatening canines suggests that millions of years before spoken language or modern societal norms, our ancestors were already settling down, forming long-term bonds, and building intimate relationships. This may have been the turning point, the actual missing link between humans and apes. It might not be a specific ancestor that scientists are looking for, but a specific change in behavior, like going from random mating and violent biting to settling down, hitching up with a lifelong partner, and planting the seeds of family life. The most jaw-dropping part is that this all happened before the invention of stone tools. But what about the walk? Was Ardipithecus strutting like Homo erectus, or still knuckle-dragging like our pals the apes? Ardi walked upright, sort of. C. Owen Lovejoy of Kent State analyzed Ardi's pelvis and concluded it was good enough to support bipedal locomotion. Not great. She wasn't out there doing laps or jumping jacks, but Ardi did indeed have functional legs that could have let her walk upright for short bursts. She had muscle attachments in the right places, muscle attachments that chimps don't have. This brings up a misconception so common it deserves to be framed in a museum. The idea that humans evolved from chimpanzees. It's just not true. Humans share a common ancestor with chimps, yes, but chimps have been evolving just as long as we have, and in a very different direction. In fact, Ardi might be more similar to the ancient Ancestor X of chimps than modern chimps are. Her anatomy shows features that chimps lost millions of years ago, like the small stiffening bone in the foot that helps with upright walking. Chimps ditched that bone to become better tree acrobats. Ardi, on the other hand, still had this small stiffening bone in her foot. She didn't knuckle walk like chimps. Her arms weren't optimized for swinging from branches. Her tree skills were decent, but not Cirque du Soleil. Ardi was something different, something in between. She wasn't quite human, but she wasn't ape either. Ardi is the closest thing that scientists have found to the real Ancestor X. Maybe one of those skull fragments from the 7-million-year-old hominin could reveal an even older Ancestor X. But for now, Ardi is the best that science has to offer. And Ardi is pretty awesome. But the moral of this story is that now when you hear someone saying something like, "Why are there still monkeys if we evolved from monkeys?" you can calmly explain that humans never evolved from monkeys. It just didn't happen. Who do you think was the real Ancestor X? And how long ago do you think they lived? Let me know any theories you have in the comments. And thanks for watching! Remember to subscribe and hit that notification bell, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!